It is now 6 o'clock.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome you to a meeting of the Cunningham Township Board for Monday, April 12th, 2021. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Here.
Mr. Sachs,
Here.
Ms. Hersey, Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Roberts,
Here.
Mr. Colebrook,
Here.
Mr. Miller, Mayor Marlin,
Present.
Ms. Shenoweth,
Present.
Mr. Williams. That's it.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, minutes from the previous meetings of March 8th, March 22nd, and April 5th, 2021. Is there a motion for approval?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Moved by Bill Colebrook, seconded by Mary Alice. Any corrections? Okay. Will the clerk?
I just want to add Assessor Williams is in the meeting now.
Thank you, Wayne. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is additions to the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda? None? Okay. We'll now move to public participation. If you'd like to address the Cunningham Town Board, please raise your hand. Okay, I see no hands raised. We'll move on to committee to verify bills.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. So we have a couple of things. We'll first start with the bills. So in the town fund, we had $81,765.89. In the general assistance fund, we had $105,781.11. The total is $187,547.00. As you will see in the town bills, we are at about 105 general assistance participants. This has been edging downward, both as we confirm who's living in Champaign and who's living in Urbana after the kind of shelter in place has lifted. It also shows that the economy is moving, and we've had a number of Social Security, a number of participants who have secured Social Security disability, which is great news. We have 44 participants who are homeless, about 41%. It's been hovering around that for a while. Average age has remained the same, around 44 years old. The community work program remained closed in March, but we are working in earnest on a reopening. So rental assistance, you'll see we had 12 households supported in the town bills last month. This is a combination of our standard rental assistance. We have COVID rental assistance supported by CU Public Health, where all CU Public Health dollars go directly for the rental assistance. And then we've also had angel donor dollars help GA participants move into housing. All of our public health dollars have been expended. We are providing up to 3 months of rental assistance while funds last, since we are running under budget due to the eviction moratorium, as well as federal dollars coming in through Regional Plan Commission. We also saw a number of people not be able to pay down their rent. And during COVID, 3 months is appropriate. That seems to be what people need to move off. In fact, it's usually between 1.5 and 3 months of rent. We now have enough options that any applicant who lives in Urbana who's making 200% of poverty level or below, we're helping them in some way, whether that's through a partner or through ourselves. 100% of folks we're able to help, which I'm really excited about because that's what people need right now. You'll see no utility support bills on this month. That is because we did a huge push the last 2 months to get people paid up in advance of Ameren's moratorium being lifted. I did not support that moratorium being lifted, but the ICC voted to allow for that to happen, and the governor did not intervene. So the good news is that because of our push and because of the dollars that's been available locally, I do have one that I'm paying off right now, but in the last month during this time period, we have not seen anyone who needed that support. I spoke with our rental assistance and utility assistant partners, and we think the next big gap is going to be when LIHEAP closes and is not open. So there's a potential July, August, September timeframe where we will need the dollars, and we do have dollars available thanks to the Unitarian Universalist Fund. We also are seeing some trickle in, and we'll continue to support if they cannot be supported by LIHEAP, Salvation Army, or RPC. We will support them with the UU fund, and that is countywide since it's private dollars. We have supported to date 109 general assistance participants representing 76 households to get housing advocacy. We do intensive support to help people apply for all available options. And we have been able to get basically a third of the households into housing, which is great. We continue to work so that we can get all households that need that subsidy into some kind of housing. We launched a new program. You'll see a couple of salt and light items in the town bills detailed. We launched a new program called housewarming, township housewarming program. So if one of our participants is moving into housing, they don't have anything, they can shop at either Salt and Light or Habitat for Humanity Restore, and we pay for their move-in. And we do like a per person plus per child amount. So we had a 6-child, 1-mom household move into Champaign recently. Champaign provided the rental assistance. We did emergency housing. They chose to move to Champaign, and then we actually did housewarming. So that's a very exciting program that's 100% angel donor funded. You'll see that. And then our emergency housing, we call it SAS, Shelter and Services. That continues to be strong. We actually have 5 families currently supported by the SAS program, and the average household's hotel stay continues to be about 40 days. So we're not seeing that go up or down. I did include quarterly financial reports. I'll just bring that up during the officer's report. Did you all have any questions about the town bills?
Okay, is there a motion to approve the report? Is there a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the bill report.
Okay. Second,
I'll second.
moved by Bill Colbrook, seconded by Bill Brown. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Dennis?
Yeah. It's kind of hard to review the bills when we receive them so late. I wonder if it's possible to get them a little bit earlier. Danielle. I mean, it's a lot of material to look through, and I'm not the sharpest guy on balancing things and following through on line items. And when you get it 45 minutes before the meeting, it just doesn't seem like it's possible to do that. So I wonder if you could do that better.
Yeah, that's not correct. The clerk posted the town bills on Thursday, and you received them as part of your packet. I think what you're referring to is the supervisor's memo, which is basically like a kind of an overview of the statistics, but the town bills are due per law to you in advance, and you did receive those. Is that what you're referring to, or are you talking about the supervisor's memo?
Well, I don't know. I just saw that there were several things that were delivered to us today, so it might not have been this particular thing. Okay, just all right, Chris. I looked at it this morning. I looked for it this morning. I didn't see it, but I looked at it just recently.
Well, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer these. These have been posted publicly since Thursday.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Council members, Trustee Brown,
Yes.
Trustee Colebrook,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Sachs,
Yes.
Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Reports of officers.
So just briefly, the only other thing I have is I did provide quarterly financial reports, which I thought would be helpful for a closed session discussion about property acquisition. These are also be presented to at the annual town meeting tomorrow with the 2 audits this last year and the year before. But I just wanted to review some noteworthy items from income. We have reached 100% of anticipated income 3 quarters through the year. That's great news. We will be then over income for the year because of primarily due to the Cure Act reimbursements we received, angel donations, the UU fund and SSI reimbursements, all of which have been about double what we expected. UU fund being a new fund. The miscellaneous income, which is largely cure funding. We're actually waiting for our second disbursement, which will bring totals received to 202,000. Our first disbursement was around 90,000. So that's what you see. We expect 25,000 from CU Public Health for rental assistance already reimbursed. So in terms of income, we're in pretty good shape because of that reimbursement. We budgeted for a pretty significant deficit due to COVID, and thanks to the state and federal government, they have helped pay us back for some of that deficit, which I think is appropriate and great. Noteworthy items from expenses. Personnel is right on track at 75%, even though we've been able to increase staff capacity. We are over on legal costs and really should be looking at how to kind of control those going forward. I know that we have a lot of balls in the air, but legal costs tend to be continue to be high. Administrative costs include the pictometry, $40,000. That's why that is over. And then the supervisor's office expansion has pushed janitorial rent, office and equipment over. Major equipment expenses include, and that there's in addition to the expansion, we purchased security cameras and video communication for walk-up service, and then we had to have a second copier for assessors. The miscellaneous expense includes our earnest money, and we are running at 63% of our budget for assistance programs. We are 75% through the year, but we did budget a very large deficit, hoping to recoup that in different ways, which we're doing. So I'd actually like to hope that we don't have to be as far in debt as we expected with assistance this year. The state and federal funds were unexpected, but we've been able to fill a lot of gaps with our flexible spending with the Angel Donor Fund. So I just wanted to let you kind of see where we were in terms of our financial report. We are on track to come at or under budget overall. And so I feel like we're in pretty good shape. The issue is that the line items we spend from are not the line items we expected. So we will be bringing a new budget back to you if we go over 10% of any line item. There's a kind of a certain amount. We can't have a variation in our budget over a certain percentage. We've exceeded that and we'll need to come back to you. So you should expect that next month. You'll actually have 2 budgets, the current year and the next year, coming to you next month, and we can talk through that piece. I think that's all I have for my report. Wayne, did you have anything?
I'll let Will give the assessor report.
Well, evening.
Good evening.
All right. Currently we're on track. I don't know how familiar you guys are, but the values are turned in every year around June 15th to the county assessor. So we're actually on track to have those values actually turned in on time this year. This year, there won't be any revaluations of neighborhoods, but instead the neighborhoods will receive factors based on, I guess, where they are in terms of the median. We continue to feed like data into the system. I know with COVID and the office move, it kind of slowed down the data entry part into the new AIM system, but we're still chugging along with that. And as far as like, I don't know if any of you have visited the website lately, but it's kind of the traditional website we launched last year when it first became live. So one of the things we've been working at is kind of creating some videos that will make it, I guess, more transparent for taxpayers to kind of understand what an assessor is, how the system kind of works. So these are the things to kind of be looking forward to in the next 60 to 90 days with the website. But other than that, everything's chugging along as normal. Any questions?
Any questions? Mary Alice?
Thank you, William. What percentage of the data entry is complete now in Ames?
I say, if we're talking all residential, exempt and commercial properties, we're probably somewhere close, I say like 65%.
And was this the data that was lost last time from the last report?
That was part
Well,
of it. That was part of it. And I think that's the guess, but I can get you a more exact number. I can send that to you this week.
Okay. And then can you remind me, I know we had discussions about the quad year. Was that this year or last year?
Last year.
Okay. All right. That's what I thought. I wanted, and then I had a question for Danielle. It's a very small question.
Sure.
So in the overview from where we are in the counts, there is something called payroll expenses. Now I know it's a very small amount, but I'm wondering why we're at 99% or what that is supposed to represent. Maybe that's a better question.
So I
Go
can
ahead.
take that. What that represents is a fee that our payroll service charges for each direct deposit for payroll. So
Okay.
with the expansion in staff and the expansion in interns, and a lot of that has to do with COVID, that's probably going to go over because there are just more people to pay.
Yeah,
So, but
many folks used to take them as checks, but we started to do direct deposit to minimize physical contact and transfer. So I think almost everyone is direct deposit at this point.
Okay. And then you said that you mentioned that you put up cameras outside of township. Is there a monthly billing for that, or is that just a one-time fee?
We chose not to do a maintenance fee. We would do, if something does happen, I have to pay for support, but I felt that the monthly fee was higher than what I thought we would use annually. So no, there's no monthly fee. There was an expense. It was originally calculated to be covered by cure expenses, but actually they covered more of our payroll than initially expected. That said, we did have some security issues at the township and decided to go ahead and put security cameras up.
Were those issues during the day or were they during non-business hours?
They were during the day while staff members were in the office and involved property damage on multiple occasions.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Bill? Bill?
Yeah, there was a news report that our request to intervene on the OSF case was denied because I guess it was too late or we hadn't requested it early enough. Can you tell us a little bit about what the impact of that is?
not an open session, Bill.
It's not public information.
Well, you asked a question about the impact, and so the impact is not something that we're going to discuss in open session.
Okay, I'll add that to my to the motion to go into closed session then.
We're not prepared to discuss that tonight, but we were going to schedule a closed session at a future meeting.
Okay, I'll be able to talk about it after a couple of weeks anyway, I guess.
Right. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Is there any unfinished business? I don't see any listed. We'll move on to new business. The first item on the agenda is a closed session to discuss the purchase of real property for the use of Cunningham Township, including discussing whether a particular parcel or parcels should be acquired pursuant to the Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 120/2 Can we have a motion to go into closed session?
Sure, I'll do that. I make a motion and we go into closed session per the items you mentioned.
And I'll second it.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Bill Colbrook. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook.
Yes.
That motion passes. So we will instruct folks to leave this meeting, and the link to the closed session will be sent in your email.
Do we have a quorum to call the meeting to order? Yes, I'd like to move that we come out of closed session and restart open session.
And I'll second it.
Will the clerk please call the roll? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay, I'm sorry. I had it muted. Oh, Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item on the agenda is resolution number T 2021-04-005R, which is a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an agreement with the city of Urbana for ESG fund for fiscal year 22.
So just a quick explanation of this. So you may recall, we had a similar resolution with a similar contract with the city of Urbana back in November. That was for emergency solution grant COVID dollars. This is the standard emergency solution grant dollars. It's for the same program, Bridge to Home. We have asked the city of Urbana to fiscally sponsor. We need to show the state we essentially have agreement from our board for that sponsorship. The final agreement, subrecipient agreement, actually will look like the one I attached, but it won't be that one. So we have to wait until the state sends us kind of final details. But essentially you're authorizing me to sign that contract when it comes. And that's the same thing you did last November.
Any questions for Danielle? Okay, can we get a motion? Bill Brown?
I'll move to approve resolution number T 2021-04-005R, resolution authorizing supervisor to sign an agreement with the city of Urbana for ESG funds FY22.
I'll second it. Dennis.
Moved by Bill Brown, seconded by Dennis. Further discussion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is resolution number T 2021-04-006R, which is a resolution also authorizing the township supervisor to sign a lease with the city of Urbana for 202 Wood Street, Urbana, for use as a solidarity garden.
Yeah, so I sent you The lease for this, it's a lease agreement between the city of Urbana and Cunningham Township. As you recall, Township spearheaded a collaborative effort across the county to develop gardens. It's a mutual aid network across, we've had folks in Mahomet growing vegetables. We had folks in Urbana growing vegetables. Last year, a lot of people, as they were sheltering from home, pitched in and grew fresh food for their neighbors in need, as well as for themselves. And the schools, the park district, the library, Sola Gracia, Channing Murray Foundation, Carl Foundation, have all been partners in that project, public health as well. And so we distributed thousands of pounds of fresh food that otherwise would not have been produced by providing the seeds and the tools and whatnot and the space. We actually used all of the space that was available to us. And this opportunity came forward with the city of Urbana having a third of an acre lot. They had an RFP process. We put in an RFP as Solidarity Gardens. Township has agreed to be the leaseholder and fully responsible party. So if Solidarity Gardens goes away, it's a township garden. Otherwise, we do meet twice a week to collectively govern this collaborative, Solidarity Gardens Collaborative. And we intend to spend the first year working with the community in that area. It is a neighborhood garden, so it's very important to connect with Canaan Baptist Church, the African grocery store, the Parasol Records, 25 o'clock. I've already connected with Urbana Adult Ed, and many of our participants live at the homestead apartments that is nearby. So we're really excited because we have a lot of participants who live in that area, and because we have a lot of potential community partners to launch a brand new garden. I am hiring 2 interns for that garden. So if anyone really wants to start a new community garden, please send them my way ASAP. I put the word out about that. This allows me to enter into a lease agreement with the city of Urbana. What I'd ask you to do is essentially to confirm the lease agreement that I gave you with accepting legal tweaks from the city of Urbana. They wanted to make sure there was no electric lighting. They wanted to make sure that we did not have porta potties. They want to make sure that we will have insurance and hold the city harmless. I think those were basically the 3 areas that they wanted to see changed. So as long as if you could basically accept the lease that I sent you, understanding that there will be a few changes based on the city of Urbana's request, but that you will authorize a lease for this property as long as it does not exceed $1 per year. That is my request for this evening. That'll allow us just to finish up the pieces that we need to with the city of Urbana legal. And then I believe it'll be taken care of on an administrative level at the city is my understanding. Mary Ellis?
I have 2 questions. The first one is I don't find the lease in the emails that you sent us. We have a memo, we have a budget, we have a balance, we have the contract for sale, we have the supervisor, and we have the resolution. Am I missing it?
It is, was it not included on the town packet?
And I didn't see it in the town packet.
It's not added to the packet. Let me, if you would like, yeah, it looks like it didn't make it into the packet. I actually have the more revised version from the city. It just came to me. And I can send that.
Can I make a suggestion then? Can we have a 5-minute special meeting next week so that we have an opportunity to look at the lease? I don't like approving something without actually seeing the legal documentation.
Absolutely. I really apologize because I believe I sent the lease over. So I should have checked the website to make sure that it had gotten posted with the rest. Yes, if you would prefer a meeting next week and then we table this, that's certainly fine. Or it could be 2 weeks. I actually originally thought let's do it in May because we're just going to have community conversations. I'm not so urgent on the need to approve this lease. The issue is that there were 2 people who responded to the RFP. it was our group, and then it was a person who actually lives right next door to the property and would like to grow vegetables this year for his wedding. And he's got to get started right away. And we're not going to grow things. We're just going to do community design. And he said he would put it back. He will basically help us prepare the soil. So I was trying to work with his timeline because he actually needs to get stuff in the ground. So if it's okay with you and you want to do next week or the week after, I think that'll still give him a chance to get things in the ground in time.
But it would work to do, it would work to do it next month as well?
Well, I guess if he grows the seed, if the city could provide us the ability to start tilling up the soil, that would be great. I think that's
without the lease.
to do. Mhm.
Okay, it sounds like we'll do a special town board meeting either next week or 2 weeks from now. We'll figure that out. At
Okay.
least we'll have enough time to look at the lease.
Yeah, my apologies. If I had caught that, I would have sent it to you.
So do
Yeah.
we need a motion to forward this to a special meeting, Phyllis, or how do we handle this?
Is this for the resolution or is it for the contract or what?
It's the resolution on the garden.
Oh, okay. Yeah, since you're not gonna vote on it tonight, are you?
No,
No,
Okay, yeah. Then that's what you need. You need a roll call to send it on.
do we have to specify a date for a special meeting?
You can if you want to. I would suggest that you do, since you're talking about moving it from this meeting
Okay.
to another.
So this is the 12th, the 19th. Would the town board be comfortable with next week, the 19th? Is that enough time?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll need a motion to move this for consideration on April 19th.
So I'll make that motion. I move that we send resolution number T 2021-04-006R to a special meeting on April 19th.
I'll second that then.
Okay, moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Dennis. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes,
Mr. Colebrook.
Yes.
That motion passes.
could I ask a question about this before we leave the topic?
Here, by the way. Jared is here.
And Sharice's been here for a while.
Let the record reflect that Jared Miller and Sharice Hersey have joined the meeting. Dennis, you had a question?
Yeah, Danielle, this is a lot like the establishment of the Lehrman Garden over on East Washington. And one of the only issues that the gardeners had to solve was supply of water for irrigating the garden. So if you come back next week, do you have maybe you could cover your thoughts about how they're going to accomplish that? You may have to have a water line taken from the street over to the garden area for irrigation. Okay.
Actually, yeah, I have 2 donations from neighbors for water, but I can go give details about that. And there is a water line. If I paid to establish a meter, we could do that as well if the neighbors change.
Yeah, that was just one of the nutty things that you have to solve before you can actually grow plants. Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes,
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. And last item on the agenda is resolution 2021-04-007R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign a contract for purchase of real estate. Is there a motion to get this on the floor?
I'll move that we put resolution number T 2021-04-007R with a recommendation, to approve this resolution.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further comments? Danielle, did you want to make?
I just wanted to say that because the township has been growing its programs, as I've announced to the public and to the town board, we served over 4,000 residents last year. We've added a number of new programs. We're looking to sustain those programs past COVID. That includes emergency shelter for families with children in Urbana schools or a crisis nursery. It includes rapid rehousing for the homeless. It includes support with rental assistance to move folks into housing or to keep them in housing. You know, ultimately, our goal is to end homelessness in Urbana. As you will see in the seeds of our strategic plan, which we bumped to next month because we have quite a bit on the agenda for today. We have a strategic plan to end homelessness in Urbana with steps to do that. A piece of that picture is really to expand the options for housing in Urbana. There's a lot of different ways to do that. One of those ways is to own housing. So the piece before you tonight is to provide the township flexibility to basically expand housing close to township, close to downtown, to have these properties for the programs that we have at township. And a future press release, as well as if we need special use permits on the property, that would come before the city council, and there would be a process. At this point, we're asking to purchase these two properties at the amount of $490,000. I've asked you to move the resolution that is before you that I sent this evening and that we discussed in closed session that has the location and dollar amount. And I'm happy to answer any questions in open session that you may have.
Bill Brown?
Yeah, since it's a different resolution than what was online, I wonder if we should read the last part that was added. I did have a question just in general about when we talk about ending homelessness in Urbana. Of course, a lot of homelessness and homeless funds come from federal and state sources. And how do you answer people that say, well, you can't really end homelessness in Urbana without ending homelessness in Danville and Champaign and Bloomington and Decatur, because people move back and forth when they're homeless? So how do we work with on a more regional scale to leverage the funds that are out there to work at that level, so that we aren't trying to end homelessness in Urbana, but trying to end homelessness for the whole East Central Illinois at the same time?
So to answer your question, first I would say there's different definitions of homelessness, and I think we're looking at those pieces of, like, there are communities, including our community here in Champaign County, that first started to focus on veteran homelessness. There were a lot of dollars to end veteran homelessness, and there are places in Illinois that have completely eliminated veteran homelessness. Champaign County is very close to achieving that. It's very close to achieving the end of homelessness for veterans in our community. And we have not seen that our initiatives to end veteran homelessness have somehow meant, you know, there's multiple veterans coming into the community. So we're very close to achieving that. The next area that we've worked on very hard as a continuum, meaning countywide, all the various, I think there's 21 different agencies, including the city of Urbana and Cunningham Township at the table, to really focus on chronic homelessness. And thanks to the Housing Authority opening up a voucher process during COVID, we've been able to address a lot of the chronic homelessness in the community. And chronic homelessness is defined as multiple instances of homelessness in a year, and a certain period of time of being homeless, usually 2 weeks or longer, and then multiple instances of homelessness. So I think the next step or frontier, so to speak, is to end homelessness with our kids. We know the number of kids that we have who are homeless. That number is, let me just pull this up. Let's see. I thought I had it at my fingertips. The number of homeless kids is about 600 kids in the county as a whole. In Urbana, it's about 200 kids. I pulled these numbers from Regional Office of Education. It's a doable amount, right? And so it's a finite amount. We can quantify it and we can focus on that. And that includes both literally homeless families, as well as what is called McKinney-Vento Definition Act homeless, which is basically the majority of homeless families are couch surfers. So I'd be happy to engage in, as we unveil our strategic plan, what it looks like to end homelessness. There's a campaign to end homelessness on the national level. Lake County was recently awarded dollars to end homelessness in their community. The Oak Park Township has created a strategic plan to end homelessness in Oak Park that has been inspirational for our own strategic plan here. So you don't get somewhere unless you start. And I think that there's what we've been able to do is to, make significant progress in Urbana and continue along that trajectory.
So would you say these 8 units would fill another safety net, basically, that people that don't fall into other categories and are able to access funds and programs that are larger, that involve more units, that slip through the net, and these would help catch those Urbana school kids and stuff?
Yeah,
Is that a good way to think of it?
Yeah, so we already have a program for homeless families and people with disabilities. It is operated out of a hotel. That was possible under COVID, and it's not during COVID. So if we do not provide a stable housing, if we do not provide a sustainable solution, we're going to see the dollars for that program, which have been pretty economical and fully funded by private donations, skyrocket, and we'll have to take that on as a tax levy. So part of this, it's not the whole piece, but we would like this property as an option for those for that emergency housing, as well as for our rapid rehousing programs. Our rapid rehousing program, frankly, it's still difficult to locate housing for people with housing subsidies in both Urbana and Champaign, even though Urbana prohibits that kind of discrimination. So it will allow us, to house people, and allow to house people more affordably than we're currently doing, and to be able to provide that rich case management support very close to township.
Okay, thanks.
Any other council comments? Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mary Alice, seconded by Dennis. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Both of the clerks are muted.
Well, my computer keeps going down
I see.
and it just come back up. So we're ready for a roll call?
Yes, we are, please.
Okay. Ms. Wu,
Yes, and I think Bill Colbrook is the one who seconded that motion.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong line. You're correct. Thank
Okay.
you.
Now, are we ready now?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. We have no further business before the Cunningham Town Board. This meeting is adjourned. I do want to announce, however, that tomorrow evening is the annual meeting of the Cunningham Township, and it begins at 6 p.m. It's an in-person meeting in City Council chambers. If you're going to attend the meeting, you must use the north entrance of the City Council building, which is the entrance by the public parking lot, and masks will be required, and numbers of participants will be limited based on public health guidelines. So.
And just on that topic, since we were planning on unveiling our strategic plan, but we're limited due to COVID to 18 people, We will be unveiling that at the town board meeting next month. So those who are interested in attending, we're expecting a short meeting that's focused on looking at 2 years of audits, a success statement, and a statement of our successes from 2020 that we circulated online. But the real meat of the conversation will be at that Zoom meeting where more people can participate. So I just wanted to let folks know. You are certainly welcome to attend. We're hoping to have some warm bodies in the room. At least Phyllis and I will be there. I promise to bring chocolate. So we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, with no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. And we will begin immediately with the Urbana City Council meeting as soon as the clerk's office is ready.
We're ready.
Okay, could you please call this meeting to order? Well, I'll call it to order. Could you please call the roll?
Yes. Ms. Wu,
Here.
Mr. Sachs,
Here.
Ms. Hersey,
Here.
Mr. Brown,
Sure.
Mr. Roberts,
Here.
Mr. Colebrook,
Here.
Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Could we have a motion for approval of minutes from the March 8th, March 22nd, and which are 2 meetings, and the April 5th public hearing?
I'll move approval of minutes.
I'll second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Sharice. Are there any corrections? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up are presentations and public input. First item is a presentation by Scott Dossett and Tony Allegretti, and it's on the elimination of CPRB membership restrictions based on felony convictions. And I would ask if Mayor Pro Tem Dennis Roberts could take over the chair for a few minutes. I need to sign a document.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we have a presentation. Are we ready for that presentation?
Hello, yes, we're ready. It's mostly just talking points. It's not really a PowerPoint of any sort.
However you want to do it.
Okay, just for all who don't know, my name is Tony Allegretti. I'm one of the members of the CPRB. I know Mr. Dossett was going to join via phone. I don't know if he's here yet or not. He has not joined yet. Okay. Either way, the resolution that we passed out of our board dealt with removing section 19-22C of the CPRB ordinance, which would remove the requirement that a person, in order to serve on the board, not have a criminal felony conviction or plea to serve. We are requesting that be removed from the ordinance. I can answer questions that the council may have about why we're seeking that. Generally, I think it seeks to, or by removing section C, it really helps to fulfill the goal of section D, which would allow the mayor to further endeavor to reflect the community to serve on the board. As the council is probably well aware, interactions with the criminal legal system don't span equally across all races, classes, genders, ages. And so having a felony conviction also would unequally impact different communities or different sub-communities in Urbana. There are a number of reasons why people may decide to plea to a felony conviction. A number of those have nothing to do with their culpability to the offense. Also, we believe that the blanket ban on all felonies is very restrictive. There are a number of felonies that are non-violent that someone can be convicted of. Felony traffic conviction for driving on a suspended license is one offense. There are a number of prior offenses that someone can be elevated to a felony conviction, and really that's all dependent on what the state's attorney decides to charge, and that varies from county to county, state to state. We think it'd be more equitable to remove that requirement for someone to serve on the board. Again, modifying the ordinance to remove Section C doesn't remove any sort of control that the mayor has to appoint people to the board. So we believe there's still plenty of ability for the mayor and the others who are deciding who to put on the board to make the proper call if someone with a felony conviction were to apply to be on the board. I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
And I see that Scotty Dassett's now currently also online. Yes, Mayor.
I'm back, so I can take back the meeting. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
Certainly.
Thank you. So any questions for either of the presenters? Mary Alice and then Bill.
So in spirit, I'm in support of this change. I had two questions. I watched the CPRB last meeting, and I think there was a discussion in terms of how to change the ordinance. And it seemed to me that the idea was to come with a group of changes and not one-offs. So it sounds to me like right now the board is discussing all of the different particulars, and then is the intent of the board to give us an updated document with everything that you've kind of come to an agreement with?
Scott, if you want to take that one, I know we had discussed doing that.
Yeah, can you hear me, Tony?
Yes.
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 Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I don't remember that conversation, Mary Alice. I'm sorry. I think what we understand is that there is sort of a bank of necessary changes to the ordinance, and then we're entering with this suggestion here to council into you might call them sort of optional sort of changes to the ordinance. It was my intention when I made the motion to pass this forward to add the felony exclusion to the bank that I know Carolyn Mitten and Lamond are aware of and are working on for future presentation to council in the context of an ordinance rewrite.
Okay. And then my second question had to do, I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm incorrect, I think that when CPRB was originally formed, there was some kind of rider that was put on the FOP's contract. And so I'm wondering if this is in conflict with anything that was in that contract.
Well, for certain, there are at least one or two other things that have come up in conversation and have been discussed at the board that are in conflict with the FOP. And in fact, knowing that that agreement is soon to be negotiated or maybe in the middle of negotiation now was one of the reasons that it seemed as if this was an opportune time to offer this so that city staff and the union could negotiate those terms.
There is a side letter specifically related to this topic in the FOP contract. So yes, you're right.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Any other questions? Bill?
Yeah, that was pretty much my question. I think we've had the votes on council to eliminate this for at least 8 years. I think the side letter to FOP contract has been definitely a bind. If I was an officer thinking about negotiating that part, I might counteroffer, well, if we allow felons or convicted felons or former felons on the CPRB, can we also have retired police officers or people that have been involved in law enforcement? Because that's currently prohibited too, if I remember right. Did you guys talk about that at all? And how would you feel about that if we allowed both?
Yeah, we did. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, we did discuss that, and we felt, and I think there was some general agreement that the officer's position or side of any one of these complaints is going to be presented by the police that are presenting at any particular complaint. We didn't think it was necessary to remove that ban on law enforcement from serving on the board. Because it's a citizens police review board. If you have the police reviewing the police, we felt that it wouldn't really give any credence or lend any credence to the board, or it may diminish the integrity of the board or views from the community that if you are just going to have another internal police review board, in effect that, it takes away from what the board is supposed to do. So we did not think that removing both at the same time was necessary. The section C, removing the felony conviction, I think it's a false dichotomy that, felons on the board and police on the board are removing those two as somehow removing two diametrically opposed groups of people. If that answers the question. It's not cops and robbers,
Right.
when it comes down to putting people on the board.
Just thinking from a negotiating standpoint, what might be possible. Thanks.
Any other questions? Sharice?
So when you're thinking about, are there particular felonies that you're thinking about for certain that, like, is there going to be a list, or how is that going to be organized or listed, or is it all felonies, or is it people who have done their time and, or have done their probation or parole or whatever? I mean, that's what I mean, because I don't know if you have an idea of any particular felonies that, like you said, a lot of things can be raised to a felony that's maybe nonviolent or anything like that. So
sure, we had just what we had proposed was just removing that section. We didn't get into particular felonies or discussing, do we want to draw a line at violent felonies or forcible felonies? That may be something that comes up as Mr. Brown discussed with negotiating with the FOP about, where this, where the chips end up falling. Just speaking for myself, I could see that being a point of contention about, the blanket ban and then turning it over into a blanket removal. There's a number of shades of gray that perhaps this ends up coming to. But all the CPRB did was propose to bring this before the council to remove section C. We thought that was the cleanest thing to do.
Yeah, I might just add that, this is all predicated on the fact that, the mayor uses his or her judgment in terms of appointments to the board. And we talked a little bit about classification of felonies in the meeting, but not a lot. But what I suspect is that someone who had committed a violent felony wouldn't, they might apply, but probably wouldn't pass muster through the interview process.
The other thing, if we're talking about someone who has been convicted of a serious felony and is likely to be sentenced to serve, a considerable amount of time behind bars in the Department of Corrections, that person who comes out on the other end is definitely not the same person who went in. And that insight or view of that person, the CPRB doesn't necessarily think is going to be diminished just because they have been convicted and served time for a criminal offense. The whole idea is to be restored and rehabilitated and ready to serve and to be a productive member of society. And if we, further continue to treat people with felony convictions as, modern day scarlet letter holders, then they're never going to really be able to be reintegrated into society. And serving on a board like this, or being, engaged in civics of their community, is something that shouldn't be prevented just because they've been convicted of a felony.
Yeah, that's well said, Tony. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, this will be obviously part of discussions at CPRB going forward, and eventually you'll see some recommendations for changes to the ordinance. Bill Colbrook.
I don't have a question, but I've got a comment.
Well, I'm going to remind folks that this is a time for questions for the presenters, and then if we want to add this for further discussion on an agenda, we can put that on another agenda. But
okay,
this isn't a time for council discussion or commentary. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Scott and Tony.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. We'll move on to public input. If you'd like to address the council, please raise your hand. And first up is Tracy Chong.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tracy Chong. First up, I would like to say that I am in support of removing the no criminal felony requirement for serving on the CPRB. People with close encounters with the criminal legal system, the ones who would provide the diversity and experience needed on the board. And I think what you guys fail to mention or discuss is that this requirement is also discriminatory and in violation of the Urbana Human Rights Ordinance. And in regards to Bill Brown's comments about allowing an ex-police officer, I mentioned it during the CPRB meeting, and I'll mention it again here. An ex-police officer and even a retired police officer would still have ties to the police department. His colleagues will be there, people who he worked with for years, 20 years, would still be there. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes we spend so much time at work that our colleagues are like our second family. I don't think that just because a police officer is retired, those ties and loyalty will be cut, and there will most likely be an asymmetrical bias. Next up, I was thoroughly disappointed at last week's discussion of City Council's violation of the Open Meetings Act. I think this discussion was a perfect example of Council not taking responsibility, not admitting mistakes, not learning from mistakes, refusing to apologize, not wanting to address difficult issues, and it actually was a downright dishonest conversation. No one addressed the issue of City Administrator Carol Mitton retaliating against the complainants by publishing their email and personal home addresses. There was no discussion of how Urbana's attorney and ethics officer could be so dishonest in his legal advice just to support the restrictions Mayor Marlin wanted. Mayor Marlin herself refused to comment, even though she was responsible for these speech restrictions and ordinance. You guys, City Council members, failed to address the actual issues at hand, instead asking irrelevant issues like discussing vulgarities, profane language, nudity, etc. You guys act like you don't know the actual reason Mayor Marlin wanted these restrictions. It was never about vulgar or profane language. It was about not wanting to hear criticism and critical comments about staff and public officials. You guys deprived me of my right to speak. You were found in violation of the state statute, and all you can say is that it is a useful experience. Maybe you can elaborate what was useful about it. That would at least be useful. You would not even discuss what we learned from this incident and how we can assure that this would not happen again in the future. I also think that council should consider removing this section of the ordinance. as Mayor Marlin's intention for the ordinance, which was to silence the public from making critical comments, are pretty despicable in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will comment on this. We are advised by our legal counsel not to discuss this particular topic as it is the subject of an ongoing litigation, and we do not discuss ongoing litigation. Thank you. Next up is Eddie Pratt Jr.
Hi, can you hear me clear?
Yes, we can.
Great, great, great. Well, it's my hope that everyone is safe on this this evening, this lovely evening here in Urbana. So I've been listening, and I have to say that I disagree with Bill Brown's assessment about having a member of the police, be it current or former, on the public review board. See, I have a firm belief that if we are going to reach a actual post-racial society in America, and in particularly in this community, one of the things that we cannot be doing is compromising with the same systems that brought us here in the first place. So I disagree with having a person who is a former police officer on the police review board, because that is a direct conflict of interest for the same reasons that Ms. Chong so eloquently put out there. We cannot expect someone who was in league with these people, who were in union with these people, to be unbiased when it comes to addressing police brutality, when they, in fact, were a part of the same set of people who beget these actions in the first place. I thoroughly support taking off the whole idea of a background check being needed to serve on these boards. In fact, I implore for the opposite. I would think that in order to find a true level of fairness, you would want to put people on that board who have been more affected by injustice, or for the sake of civility, just the Justice Department to be the ones who are on this board, because who would be more centered? Someone who is outside the system, who only has maybe propaganda to lean on to tell them about what is right or wrong, or those who are right in the thick of it? So I side with the people. As a matter of fact, though I don't like to put myself out there, somebody exactly like me is somebody that you would want. Someone who doesn't have a felony, who has been through the police system, who has been arrested, but is not a felon. But even if they were a felon, as a matter of fact, I would think that would make them more qualified than less. So, in closing, absolutely, you would want someone who has been through the ringer to tell you exactly what happens within it, to tell you if there is implicit bias at work or not, as if you didn't have all the stats and all the data that would suggest that implicit bias has been working in our system all along, which it has, and which everyone on this call probably knows. So as far as that's concerned, as far as this whole talk is concerned, I see it as purely reactive. We know what needs to change. And as far as the public review board is concerned, having police on it would destroy the exact and utter purpose for which it was founded. I yield the rest of my time.
You're muted, Diane.
Next up is Alan Max Axelrod.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for putting the clock up. So I want my comment tonight, although I wish that I could talk about additional topics with confidence, I want my topic tonight to be narrow. So I'm going to emphasize the resolution that you have before you tonight on utility shutoffs and to try to drive home the severity and the clarity behind this issue. Let's start with the severity. I am not somebody who takes pandemic safety lightly, as you probably have guessed by now. I'm also not somebody who travels for the fun of it, which I guess now you know. Despite that, this weekend, to prepare for the mass scale safety issue we are facing, we printed over 10,000 handbills and distributed them in, going south to north, Pana, Springfield, Decatur, Champaign-Urbana, Bloomington Normal, Havana, Pekin, Peoria, Joliet, and Waukegan just over this weekend. Activists there are in the process of distributing that literature to households that are vulnerable. Again, this is not recreational. This is not, the literature isn't even branded where they know the organizations that are doing this. This is trying to be as clear as possible to the people most in need and putting those handbills as close to those folks as we can. So when it comes to this resolution, there was a discussion last week about means testing and whether or not that needed to be there. So I wanted to address that specifically, because again, this is severe. We had a moratorium that was means tested for power shutoffs announced on September 22nd. 9 weeks after that, over 81,000 households were disconnected, and we had an over 150% increase in our daily coronavirus cases and an over 82% increase in the daily deaths from coronavirus. Daily stats, not even cumulative, daily. So what stopped that conclusively was the November moratorium, which for power utility shutoffs for non-payment did not have any means testing. It was unconditional. And we went from literally over 10,000 shutoffs in a month to 1 for power utilities. And across those 3 months, we saw a total of 4 shutoffs from 2 corporations that were supposed to not do any. 1 was from Commonwealth Edison, and 1 each month was from Ameren, Illinois, in each region of Illinois. This is not a coincidence. So again, to emphasize this point, this is hardly ideological, this is empirical. The facts and the data say that when we put a means test that was well-meaning for utility protections, it was disastrous. And the policy adopted by the Illinois Commerce Commission is weaker than the policy we had in place back in September. And the caseload has been over 2,000 cases a day for over 2 weeks straight already. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next up is Emily Close.
Good evening, Mayor Marland and council members. My name is Emily Close. Tonight you will vote to walk back the ordinance you enacted October 12th, the ordinance that abridged the First Amendment rights of citizens who tried to address this elected body. And although the mayor just said that your legal counsel advised you not to talk about your OMA violations because of pending litigation, I operate under no such restrictions. So I'll get right to it. Good explanations for your bad behavior were elusive during last Monday's council meeting. Instead, two council members offered excuses, evasive non-answers, and head-scratching diversions about nudity and yelling in a kindergarten-level effort to avoid accountability. The mayor, when asked to explain why she led, quote, the full charge, end of quote, to censor and silence the perceived dissenters, critics, and all-round meanies trying to address her in the council, offered up these words, quote, I have nothing more to say, end of quote. Indeed, mayor and council, the damage is done. You tarnished your own legacy and reputation as an outgoing public body. You invited the critical reactions that come from engaging in such embarrassing and questionable conduct. You are the subject of news and blog articles that point out your tenuous grasp of the First Amendment and your poorly thought out efforts to punish citizens who wish to be heard. You were the ones who walked eyes wide open into this whirling, swirling hot mess that earned you a firm and pointed rebuke from the Illinois Public Access Counselor. In a few weeks, 5 new council members will be seated. With some luck, there will be some thinkers and some questioners among the new group, some council members who will take the long view, who will ask themselves and each other whether common sense, integrity, and the rule of law will rule the day and support any planned course of action they embark upon. Urbana needs council members who will ask whether it's the proper role of government to wage war on its citizens through heavy-handed, ill-advised, misguided, illicit, and vindictive restrictions on their speech. Do better, Urbana. Much, much better. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next up is Sarah Nixon.
Hello, City Council. This is Sarah Nixon. I would first like to echo the comments made this evening by Ms. Tracy Chong and by Mr. Eddie Pratt with regard to the CPRB stance, the proposal brought forward by Mr. Allegretti and his colleague on that board. I think they articulated better than I could the reasons for supporting that move, that amendment. I also joined them in shock at some of the comments made by city council members, which conveyed a priority concern for the FOP, a concern to placate the FOB, a concern to ruffle or smooth ruffled feathers and offer potential bargaining chips. I think all of that was entirely inappropriate and quite shameful, honestly. As Mr. Allegretti pointed out in response, the CPRB is a civilian police review board. It is not an internal review mechanism, which we have seen over and over amounts to a process where the police look at themselves for passing few seconds and declare that they did nothing wrong. We saw that with the Alea Lewis case this past year, and we have seen it historically over and over and over. In fact, I challenge you to provide to us examples where that did not happen. I'm just reviewing my hand scribbled notes. Yeah, I'm going to move on. What I had planned to comment about this evening relates to regular agenda item number 2.A, an ordinance approving special use permit for the Montessori School of Champaign-Urbana for their proposal. I, in the distant past, was an instructor at the Montessori schools in Montreal, and I listened with interest to the proposal and the presentation that was brought forth last week. I think the proposed location on Goose Alley is actually quite ideal and is just a charming site for a downtown Urbana campus. I think because the location is tucked away from main arteries, it creates a safety buffer zone for children who may have to leave, walk a few steps from their parents' vehicles to the school. So that's a plus. I think that my primary concern, and that's what prompts me to speak tonight, is that I didn't hear anything about inclusivity and including financially marginalized members of the community. We know that the Montessori school tuition typically runs in the tens of thousands of dollars. I would like to hear the city, I would like to hear concern and effort put into creating special scholarships and financial support above and beyond what is already minimally offered by the schools, the Montessori School of Champaign-Urbana, specifically to Urbana residents, to minorities, to single parents, to those with demonstrated financial need. I think that concludes my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Brandy McCoy.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Hi, I'm Brandy McCoy, Urbana resident. I just wanted to speak tonight to encourage council members to approve the utility disconnection resolution with the verbiage about not requiring the no means testing, requiring no means testing. But I just think that, when people have to jump through hoops to get something that they need, it just makes it more difficult. And as Alan stated earlier, we've seen that happen. And I think that, that's something that we definitely should, try to learn from in any, future endeavors. So I just wanted to voice my my hopes that the council will pass that. And with that, thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Next up is Christopher Hansen.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Christopher Hansen. I first wanted to mention something that was actually brought up in the township meeting, the Wood Street Community Garden Project, or RFP rather. At first, that was not very well advertised. I think the city could have done a better job at that. And maybe it wasn't well advertised because someone already had in mind who the tenant was going to be. But the other thing I wanted to point out was that it sounds like there were 2 proposals submitted, and the RFP did say that the proposals were going to be open and read aloud to the public on March 22nd. I'm not sure that ever happened, and I can't find through my best efforts any way to view those proposals that were submitted. It seems to me that the public might want to see those so that they can voice opinion about which one the city should accept. So I don't know if you're going to actually do that or if I need to send a FOIA request. I'd hate to send a FOIA request for something that's supposed to be a public document, because then you guys are going to villainize me for sending FOIA requests. So it'd be better if you guys just made it public. The next item is the CPRB change. Absolutely, you should strike that section out about criminal conviction. That's already a clear violation of our human rights ordinance. It shouldn't exist. As far as the mention of the FOP contract, we do have a human rights ordinance. I'm not aware that the FOP contract can somehow negate or violate or override our human rights ordinance. So our human rights ordinance predates the current FOP contract. So I really don't care what the contract says about criminal conviction. It's illegal to discriminate on that basis. So I don't think it matters. And you guys really only talked about section 1922C, which relates to felony conviction history, but I think you should also completely strike out section 1922B. And I know there was some talk about, police officers serving on the board and stuff, but consider Mr. Allegretti, who presented earlier today. He previously worked for the public defender's office. So someone could argue that he's not allowed on the board because he has some prior affiliation with local law enforcement. And I think Mr. Allegretti is one of the most valuable members of that board. And you might have a state prosecutor who could serve on that board, and they might be a valuable member. And I'm going to actually disagree with almost everyone else who commented before me. I don't think there should be any statement at all about limiting who can be on the CPRB based on their prior employment, and that includes someone who might have been employed as a police officer. Now, there may be a problem not with employment, but with affiliation. So if you had a Urbana police officer apply to be on the CPRB who is clearly friends with the people that he, is going to be reviewing, that could be a problem. But suppose we had someone who was a sheriff or a police officer in a different state, happens to live in Urbana and wants to serve on the board. I don't really see a big issue with that. And if there is an issue, remember that appointment is going to come before the city council for approval anyways. So I think you should just strike out both of those sections. So there's no indication of any type of discrimination at all. And I think that's all I have to say about that part. And then the last thing is the discussion on the public input rules. I just want to remind the city council members, you can speak about whatever you want to speak about. The mayor, the city attorney, they have no authority whatsoever to tell you that you can't talk about something that is currently related to ongoing litigation. You can say whatever you want. You can talk about closed sessions if you want. Your elected officials, no one has any power to tell you that you can't speak about something. I think the discussion on the speech restrictions last week was a joke. It was not an honest discussion. Jared Miller was the only one who was trying to actually have an honest discussion, and no one else wanted to hear it. So, and this is what upsets the public, is when we see this over and over. And so I think the council is just not learning that what they're doing here over and over is the thing that's bringing them the language that they don't like. So thanks.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. Does anyone else wish to address the council? Okay, we'll move on to council input and communications. Any council member comments? Jared.
Since we were just asking questions of the CPRB members, I just wanted to say, that whenever you think about, well, what if this conviction, what if that conviction? It's the same problem of trying to put every situation in a very particular box of well, what if this person did this? They shouldn't be on the CPRB. What if this person did that? They shouldn't be on the CPRB. And, there are so many other reasons that somebody can become unqualified, but it should never be because they had a felony conviction on its own. That conviction should not be the reason why they don't get on. Obviously in my opinion. So if they did bring forward something to strike that language from there, I would fully support that. I think it would be valuable. I don't understand how that got into the language of the forming ordinance in the first place, but I would definitely support their mission in removing it, and I hope everybody realizes why it shouldn't. Is just principally can't reject somebody based on it solely on its own. There are so many other reasons and considerations you could take into consideration when considering somebody. But that shouldn't be the one thing, oh, they got a felony conviction. Sorry, that's it. That's my comment. Thanks.
Thanks. Just to remind us all, and I need reminding as well, is this part 3 minutes per council member per your rules? Was that
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, all right, we'll keep time. Any other council member comments? Okay. We'll move on and just, yes, Sharice.
I just wanted to say something real quick because I missed last week's meeting. And regarding the presentation tonight too, is that what I did not hear, that some people were talking about, was anybody actually recommending that there be a police officer on the CPRB. I believe that was brought up as a question as to if this, then what about some other group, and so on and so forth. And I'd also like to say that I thought that Christopher brought up a point as far as affiliation regarding that whatever if you had been a officer someplace else, and this is something that you want to involve yourself in, then that should also not be an issue. I also don't believe that having a felony conviction should keep people off of the CPRB. I was asking just for some clarification regarding if there was any type of, anything that, if there was a line that was going to be drawn, or how the CPRB, in fact, how they were going to organize that particular ordinance or change in the ordinance. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Any other council member comments? Okay, we'll move on. There are no additions to the agenda as far as I know, nor is there any unfinished business. We'll go next to reports of standing committees. Mary Alice.
All right, thank you. So all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion and one roll call vote. There will be no individual discussion of these items. If discussion is desired by the mayor, council members, or a member of the public, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed immediately after approval of the remaining items on the consent agenda. So I guess I'll ask if anybody wants to remove something from the consent agenda. All right, well, with that, on behalf of the committee, I would like to move approval of the consent agenda, which is resolution number 2021-04015R, resolution approving the transfer of volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues for single-family mortgage revenue bonds and related matters. This is the assist program for series 2021. Resolution number 2021-04016R is for the same thing, only for IHDA series for 2021.
I'll second the motion.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Jared. Any discussion? Oh, there is no discussion. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes.
All right, on behalf of the committee, I move approval of ordinance number 2021-04013, an ordinance approving a special use permit at 121 Goose Alley, plan case 2416 SU16. It was brought to us by Norman Baxley and Montessori School of Champaign-Urbana.
I'd like to second that.
And I'd like to mention that we did receive an email a couple days ago regarding the parking spaces, and I don't know if somebody can shed some more light on that.
Yes, staff is here as well as I believe the applicants. We'll start with staff. Lori.
Thank you. I think the main concern that was expressed in the email was over the potential increase in the number of spaces that might be requested in the event there's an issue with how the loading is planned to work. So perhaps though, rather than me assuming I know the intent behind the email, it might be best to perhaps hear from either the sender or the applicant to make sure that I'm not mischaracterizing the concern, if that's okay. And then we would be happy to respond to that.
Absolutely. Why don't we start with the head of Montessori School?
This is Monica from the Montessori School. I spoke with Marcus this afternoon, and I think for the most part, we have it ironed out regarding the parking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Norm Baxley, did you wish to speak? as the property owner? Can you unmute, please?
I think Monica has, spoken for me.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions from the council? Eric?
I'm curious to know what the resolution was about this.
Who wants to address that?
Marcus.
So I spoke with Mr. Baxley this morning, and
Marcus, could you speak up a bit? You're very faint.
Yes, let me see if I can turn myself up. Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay, so I spoke with Mr. Baxley this morning and Monica this afternoon, and I think that the concern was that the condition for establishing a student loading parking zone was something that was going to be instituted, immediately. Or that there was some concerns about what would actually trigger that condition. So I discussed with them that, the plan is that the school would work with the parents and encourage them to park in the parking lot City 1 to drop off their student children, and that they would not stop and park in Goose Alley to drop off or pick up their child. And if there is not any problems with traffic tying up in Goose Alley and causing conflict with other traffic or commercial traffic servicing the various restaurants and other establishments there along Goose Alley, that there would not be any reason to require establishment of a student loading zone. If there were issues with traffic conflict and those were brought to the city's attention, then the city would check into those allegations, if you will, or those complaints, determine their validity, and then work with the city engineer and the zoning administrator to determine what a good solution to that might be. It might be requiring 2 spaces, 3 spaces, 4 spaces to be set up for parent parking for picking up and dropping off students. So I think letting the applicant and the owner know that this isn't something that the city would trigger without there actually being need to do that was enough to mitigate or dampen the concerns about that condition, as well as the fact is, there was a little bit of concern about the potential cost to the school to have to rent 12 parking spaces, up to 12 parking spaces. And that discussion was, well, it wouldn't necessarily be 12 parking spaces. And we would like to, if that was required, work on part day spaces rather than full day spaces. And that really reduced the likelihood of high costs to the school. So that, I think, is what reduced the concerns of the applicant and the owner.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Eric?
Yeah, mostly. It still seems a little vague, but I mean, when we say part day spaces, I mean, how long does it take to load and unload for school? I'd imagine half hour tops because school starts, right?
Yeah, this is Tim Cowan, Public Works Director. We talked about that, Eric, and I think the intent behind it is it's probably no more than an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, because a lot of these spaces, although parking is not used 24/7 in this lot, it is sought after and very important during peak hours. So we wouldn't intend to tell them they have to rent these spaces 24 hours a day. We would say we would have some kind of prorated thing, and then probably add signage to metered spaces that say no parking in these metered spaces, 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. and 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. or whatever those hours may be. And we would charge them a prorated fee, which would be much less financially impactful to the school over a annual fee if it's ever needed.
And that is an important point. This is a contingency, so it's not that they'll start out doing this. Dennis, you were next, and then I think Bill Brown.
Yeah, I just thought it would be kind of useful to actually read the conditions which are in this special use permit request. So, so everybody kind of knows exactly what's being asked for. So I guess I'll read the ones that are pertinent. Number 1, the parking and loading must be in a general conformance with the plan submitted. 2, this special use permit will expire on August 31st, 2024. The school may apply for another special use permit for this or another location as permitted in the Urbana zoning ordinance. 3, student enrollment is capped at 28 students. Now, actually, I had a question about the fact that this permit is capping the number of students to locate at this location. And I'm wondering if it's because of the square footage within the building or some other reason. Seems a little bit arbitrary, but you're saying no. Okay, so I'm going to continue reading, and then maybe you can answer that question. The school must rent at least 3 parking spaces within 450 feet of the school prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So that's required. If upon operation, it is determined by the city engineer that the school's pickup drop-off plan creates safety or traffic issues, the zoning administrator may require the school to secure up to 12 additional parking spaces to establish a student pickup and drop-off zone in a location determined by the city engineer, or otherwise alter its pickup drop-off plan to mitigate the issues. So that's a contingency. The school number 5, the school must work with the property owner to install at least 3 bicycle loops on the property prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And the last, number 6, the school must sign a waiver of its protective buffer from new retail license and renewals of the existing liquor licenses prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So those are the details that are added to this document.
Thank you, Dennis. Bill Brown.
Yeah, I saw the original plan for drop-off that was part of the Plan Commission meeting. And for one thing, this is kind of a weird alley because it doesn't go all the way through. It ends at the parking lot there. So I think the original plan just had them making a loop through the parking lot and basically dropping people off at the bottom of the U at the end of the loop in the parking lot. And then they would just walk, whatever it is, 50 feet or 60 feet down the alley to get to class. And it seemed pretty efficient to me, at least for drop off without having to park. For pickup, I could see it being a little bit more of an issue if you might have to wait for your student, but for dropping somebody off, it just seemed like a pretty good plan. You wouldn't even have to enter the alley because you're actually in the parking lot. And apparently with COVID and the use of the parking lot, that might not work, but in general, it seems like that's a good plan. And as opposed to parking and then backing up, it always bugs me a little bit to have to park and back up. It seems more dangerous to do that than it would just to stay with the flow and stay in the aisle and just drop people off. Was there some technical reason why that original plan couldn't be followed rather than have people park?
It was brought to planning's attention by public works staff that there is a city ordinance that prohibits parking, standing, stopping in an alley unless the vehicle is a service vehicle, a delivery vehicle, commercial vehicle, city vehicle, or some other sort of specialized exempt vehicle.
It's illegal to drop somebody off, to stop and drop somebody off in an alley that's considered standing, I guess. So that would be prohibited. But since this isn't actually in the alley, apparently that's legal on the street. You can do that on the street, but not in the alley. And since this would actually be in the parking lot next to the alley, it seems like you could do that. And with it being at the very end of the alley, I don't know, there could be a special case. But if, you know, I'm just throwing ideas out there. I just think that for drop off, that's a pretty good, it looks like a good plan to me. And I hope I think there are, you know, plenty of options to work with. So I'm satisfied with the ordinance the way it is. If need be, when people leave school, if they want to meet somewhere, you know, these kids, a lot of them are going to be old enough where they could get picked up at the library an hour after school or something like that. So I think there are a lot of options. I don't think it'll be a big problem, but I'm glad that there is some recourse if it is a problem to work with the school and with Public Works to figure it out. Thanks.
And we had a question on the floor about the cap at 28 students. If I'm not mistaken, that is set by the school, not the city or space needs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That was a self-placed cap to help assure the city, city staff, neighbors that there weren't going to be 150 students here because it is a 3,300 square foot facility, and if, you know, solely relying on building code occupancy caps would allow a lot more children there than this 28 students.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Mayor, I believe Mr. Baxley has his hand up.
Oh, I didn't see that. Thank you. His tile moved to the corner. Sorry, Mr. Baxley.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I have an observation. In the 35 years that Carolyn and I have been owning and renting properties in downtown Urbana, we've had a number of schools. We've had a ballet school. We've had for 15 years a Aikido dojo on the second floor of this building. Down the street, although not our tenant, is the C4A School for the Arts. All of these, and currently there's a dance studio upstairs at 120 West Main. All of these operations have had numerous children, dozens of children at a time, coming and going, being some picked up by their parents, some old enough that they walk, they ride the bus. But there's never been an issue, there's never been a question ever of loading zones and pick up and drop off requirements for parking. And that's just an observation. I understand that these businesses and not-for-profits fell under the B4 no parking requirement status, and that there were not schools, officially schools. And that's, I understand, I appreciate that difference. The other observation I would make, or a suggestion I would make, falls more under the area of economic development. And I would suggest that in exchange for having the potential of a school in downtown Urbana, in a location that they seem to like very much, that would bring in students and their parents into downtown Urbana, who could eat in restaurants and shop in shops, that the city might actually provide a little incentive for them, rather than having what appears to me to be a rather punitive sounding, punitive reading, open-ended, or a potential for a requirement to rent 12 additional parking spaces without any specificity about how long they would need. They could be 24-hour spaces at $40 or $50 a piece, or they could be an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon at, 50 cents a day. That's not specified, but in the worst case scenario, if I were a board member looking at this clause in a special use permit that you'd be owning, that would lead me to think it's a little questionable. So what's wrong with saying, instead of we may at the discretion of a city official require an additional 12 parking spaces to be rented, why not say we would like to have you in downtown Urbana so badly that if a beer truck, a delivery truck complains that there's someone standing in Goose Alley to let their kid out or pick their kid up, why not say we will provide you with a loading zone in exchange for bringing your business, bringing your school into downtown? The revenue potential from requiring 12 parking spaces, I'm not sure what it would be, but is it worth it to the city in terms of just economics to have that open-ended, that requirement? That's my observation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further council comments? Questions? Dennis?
Certainly, that's a thoughtful thought. And right now, we deem that 3 spaces will be adequate. So why don't we just drop any other consideration about what might be required for the future from this document, and then deal with coming back to the city council to solve any issue that might arise in the future as separate, and not encumber the document with words of a nature that is speculative for future, as if there was going to be a problem in the future. Right now, the required 3 spaces should be sufficient and amount to a loading zone. So I'd like to recommend an amendment that we drop the additional text and leave it as 3 spaces, and let the future decide if we need to adjust something, and it can always come back to that.
I will second that amendment.
So that's a amendment to the original motion by Dennis, seconded by Bill Colbrook. Any discussion on that amendment?
Mary Alice has.
Mary Alice?
So I guess my question is this: it's from my experience with special use permits, we're not able to amend the special use permit conditions unless that is brought if both parties are amenable to that. Lori, can you talk about that?
Yes, and I was looking up to see if there's any trigger. I don't think there is any trigger for the city to say, thou must, applicant, bring your special use permit back so that we can reconsider the conditions. I will check that. There might be something in nuisance code or something, but typically it would be the applicant would say, oh, I need something else. I need to come back for an amendment. I don't know of a trigger that the city could, the city could switch to bring it back.
So in that case, I guess I understand Mr. Baxley's point, and I agree. I think we want to encourage a variety of people coming down to, the downtown Urbana. But I also think that we owe it to, all the other businesses in the area that if there is an issue, that we have some mechanism for us to be able to go back to the school and say, hey, can we work together in doing this? It would seem to me that perhaps the biggest concern, and maybe Monica can talk about this, is the cost of renting 12 spaces. So if that is the issue, maybe the amendment could address some of that.
Sure. In regards to the cost, I had a discussion with Marcus this afternoon. I'm just trying to find out how much this is going to cost me so that I can present it to the board and so that the board can make a fair decision. I know the 3 parking spots that we were going to rent, it was going to be a little farther away. It was for the teachers. I understood that we cannot rent spots in that particular parking lot. So I was just going to make the teachers walk. Those were a little bit more expensive. And I understand, teachers aren't always going to work during normal business hours. So I understand that they needed the 3 spots 24/7, wherever I can get them, and, they'll park there. For the loading zone one, the way Marcus explained it, it made sense. Although I will say, right now, our school, we do the kind of roundabout drop off. I have 30 kids dropped off and picked up in less than 20 minutes time. And this is for kids 2 all the way up to 14. And little toddlers carrying their book bags and all of those things, they walk in unassisted, and I can get that done in less than 20 minutes time. So.
Bill Colbrook.
I'll just repeat my comments from last council meeting. I just think this is just such a non-issue. I'm downtown all the time. I was downtown, I believe it was Sunday morning for breakfast, and there was a restaurant that was absolutely packed. People were everywhere, but in the restaurant, and outside there was no issue with the number of students that will eventually be at the school, not on year 1, but on year 3, and with the ability of the traffic pattern. So I'm gonna agree in significant part with Mr. Baxley on his comments. There's all kinds of different activities that go on downtown, and I think the casual observer wouldn't even notice the drop-offs and the pickups and stuff. I just don't think that the school downtown at that location is going to create such a significant bottleneck of traffic that we're going to even be discussing this at all. I just really think it's a non-issue.
Okay, we have a motion for an amendment for striking the second sentence in section 1, number 4, and that's related to the requirement of up to 12 additional parking spaces or otherwise altering the pickup and drop-off plan. Is there any other discussion on that amendment? Mary or Lori?
I thought I might be able to offer a bit of a compromise. What if we took out the potential for the 12 spaces, but left in the last part, or otherwise alter its pickup drop-off plan to mitigate the issues? Because the earlier condition does require them to follow the plan. So if there is a need to alter the plan, it would be best if we could do that immediately just through negotiation with the school, rather than necessarily coming through a whole process in order to alter the pickup drop-off plan. So just wanted to offer that as a potential option.
So that, if that were the case, it would read, if upon operation it's determined by the city engineer that the school's pickup drop-off plan creates safety or traffic issues, the zoning administrator may require the school to alter its pickup drop-off plan to mitigate the issues.
That is what I'm suggesting. Thank
you. Is that acceptable to you, Dennis?
Yeah, that's a better solution.
Okay.
It leaves everything open, but it's not prejudicial against the school.
I think it may satisfy the safety concerns as well as provide flexibility for dealing with the small chance that problems develop in the future.
As
Eric.
a second, I agree as well.
Okay, all right. Eric, you have comment on this one?
Yeah, I think we really want the school there. I think by the change that we're just discussing, we still leave a certain degree of uncertainty as to how it would get resolved if there was a problem or the city found that it wanted to change. And that might be a concern to the board of the school. So considering how low risk this is and the advantages of it, why not just put in there that if there is a problem, the city will make at no cost a 12-spot, up to 12-spot loading zone for the duration of this permit, which is relatively short anyway, and just give the school board some certainty in this.
I think the certainty is the fact that we will work with the school to negotiate or to work out a resolution to any issues that would arise. But any other comments? Mary Alice.
I just want to say that this is only for 3 years. So the first year, they're not going to have very many students there. So I expect no problems for the first year. And then they'll slowly increase it. And Diane was reelected for 4 years. And so it will happen during her term. So we don't have to worry about a different group of people coming in, putting all different stipulations. So I'm fine with Lori's suggestion. I think that will give the school the flexibility. I think the administration is willing to work with the school to make it work for both the city and the school. And so I think we should just keep the language that Lori's proposed.
Okay, are we ready to vote on this?
Mayor, before we vote, can you please restate the motion again?
Yes, we have the motion to amend section 1, item 4 to read, and this would be the second sentence. If upon operation, it's determined by the city engineer that the school's pickup/drop-off plan creates safety or traffic issues, the zoning administrator may require the school to alter its pickup drop-off plan to mitigate the issues. Everything else stays the same.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Could we have a roll call vote on that amendment?
Yes. Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. And then we have the main motion for ordinance 2021-04-013 as amended. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yeah. Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. Next item.
The next item up on the agenda is ordinance number 2021-04-014, an ordinance amending City Code Chapter 2, Section 2-5, electronic virtual public meetings for public input during a virtual meeting. On behalf of the committee, I move approval.
I'll second the motion.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Jared. Any comments? Discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. Last item, oh, go ahead, Mary Alice, sorry.
All right, on behalf of the committee, I move approval for resolution number 2021-04-017R, resolution declaring continued utility disconnections in Illinois to be a pandemic safety risk.
All right, there was language that was updated in section 3.
Excuse me, could we get a second, please?
I'm sorry, I will second the motion.
Will you like the second? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So we updated language in section 3 and section 5 following council concerns about expanding some information that was about the information in the act in section 3, and took out some of the language in 5 and clarified about means testing and its importance in the resolution. Hopefully both of those changes were satisfactory to everyone. And if it wasn't clear, I know upon rereading some of the language about the HB 2877, utilities are not specifically mentioned in the ordinance, but they are a direct part of the federal emergency rental assistance program, the emergency rental assistance program being administered through the CARES Act, which is what the bill is to enact. So even though it doesn't say it specifically in there, utilities are a part of the relief that's provided for in that. It's not really directly mentioned in the most of the stuff that you'll read about that legislation. So I just wanted to clarify that for anyone in case there was confusion. But hopefully both of those clarifications will find support, and happy for any questions.
Mary Alice.
Thanks for updating the information, Jared. I did have a question on section 5. I don't quite understand the last sentence. So the last sentence says, the moratorium should be without means tested, as means tested moratoria have allowed for thousands of household disconnections. I understand that part. This is the part I don't understand. While a non-means tested moratorium on power disconnections resulted in only 4 households disconnections over a period of 3 months. Is the intent to say, while a means tested moratorium and not a non-means tested moratorium?
You mean for the last sentence?
Yeah.
Well, so the last, yeah, I guess I can see that would be a little bit confusing. So the first one, where there were still over 10,000 shutoffs during those first few, those had means testing. And the last one that the sentence is referring to, it did not have means testing. There's no means testing. Does that make sense?
Yes, over a period of 3 months. So in which case, I guess I am still, so I thought that the current rules for utility disconnection were that if you declared that you had an issue of payment due to COVID related items, that you didn't have to, that they couldn't shut you off. I thought that was the current kind of what was going on with the utility company. So if that's the case, does that mean that only 4 households had disconnections during those 3 months? And is this the state of Illinois?
Correct. Yeah, this has to do with the statewide utilities. So I now I'm confused by what you're confused about.
Okay, all right. So I'm confused because from the non-means tested, meaning it doesn't matter how much money you have, right? That's what non-means tested means. In what cases did that happen in the state of Illinois? Because on the one sense, we have, thousands of households with disconnection. So were there 2 different programs?
There were two different kinds of moratorium that were issued. Yes, they're not the same.
So are we talking about the COVID statement to utilities saying that if you had issues with non-payment because of COVID related, is that what this is referring to?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I guess my only thing I would say, the moratorium should be without means tested, as a means tested moratorium have allowed for thousands of household disconnections in the state of Illinois. I guess I would throw that in there. While a second non-means tested moratorium on power disconnections resulted in only 4 houses.
Yeah, I mean, it could say different, or the should be without means non-means tested.
Right.
That's the big point. The big point is that you shouldn't be putting all of the, you must qualify under X, Y, and Z requirements and prove them to us restrictions, or allow utilities to still ask for those things in order to qualify someone, that shouldn't have those things in there. Because when they did do it, there were still thousands and thousands of disconnections. They didn't, there were not. It was much easier for people to get relief.
Bill Colbrook, you had a comment?
Yeah, I have a problem with section 5 as well, that last sentence. But the first part gives no time period, but then the second part gives a 3-month time period. So I don't think that you can equate the number on the first half of the sentence with the number on the second, because there is no consistency on time period, because time period wasn't even mentioned in the first part of the sentence. And second of all, since there is so much, I think there's a cause and effect that has attempted to be drawn here. I'm not going to dispute the numbers, that there was thousands in this instance and there was 4 instances. I'll agree that somebody's done the research and those numbers are what they are. But what nobody has done is say that there's a direct causal effect. I think there's an insinuation that there is, but there's been no proof of why the numbers are what they are. I think section 5 is strong enough with the first sentence and only the first sentence. I agree that the governor should have called for a moratorium on utility disconnections a long time ago. I would be in support of that. I think the second sentence just muddles up the whole issue.
Fair points. And I think the means testing is still language I would prefer to be included in that section, Bill, just because, even if I guess it's not demonstrated to you in this, I've seen enough that, I don't know, if you have it and they don't happen, and you do, and they do happen, as in to say, if there is means testing and there are tons of shutoffs still happening, and then there is not means testing and there are very few. That seems.
Well, I understand, but this document was done in an academic research theme and philosophy, with the references and stuff, and in academia, and enough of us know about that if you make strong assertions, there has to be strong backup. There's got to be a strong reference to it, and there's not a strong reference of the cause and effect. There's an insinuation, but that's all.
Dennis.
So here's what I think. The first sentence is fine in section 5. And then I would say the moratorium should be without means testing, period. Don't go into explaining why you think that's true. You don't need to do that. Just state your preference that you would rather have the moratorium not involved with means testing, and just say that. The moratorium should be without means testing, period. And skip the rest. Because it's really just a justification of why you want to have something done. But really what we want to say is it should be this way. Because I think it does become confusing. Because who cares about, we do care about it, but we have a preference and we're just going to state the preference.
I'd support that, Dennis. I think that's a good way to go.
Would you, Bill?
Yeah, I'd support that. I think any kind of means testing will probably come later when they try to sell the bill, because a moratorium is just a pause. So eventually most people are going to have to pay their bill, but maybe there will be additional funding at some point that will, allow some people not to pay their bill if they don't have the means. So I think that would come later. So I think saying what Dennis said would be good. The other thing I just wanted to thank Alan for was kind of getting this to talk about this. People bring us stuff, to pass or to pass a resolution on that has no legal effect, but just kind of support things. But it's been an interesting discussion, all the utility shut-off thing. One thing I learned that we can apply locally, or some future council can apply locally maybe, is how when we had the discussion about the sanitary billing, you know, a lot of our stuff is billed on the sanitary bill. Besides our part of the sanitary bill, we also put our recycling tax on there, and we put our stormwater fee on there. So that adds up. That's like an extra $15 to $20 a month for those two. So every billing period, it's substantial. And what I didn't realize before was that sanitary bill during normal times can be collected by the water company, or they have some kind of agreement with the water company. So failure to pay that sanitary bill can also result in water shutoffs. So I think that's something that you should keep in mind in the future when you think about raising the stormwater fee or the recycling tax, and maybe even how it's billed and how it's collected. I know for a long time we did that ourselves and did it individually, and it made sense to do it this way, but maybe that's something that people should think about in the future on how that part of the bill is collected.
Interesting point. Well, is there someone willing to offer a motion to amend section 5 the way you discussed, which would be to end the section 5 at the city of Urbana calls on the Illinois governor to enact a 30-day mandatory moratorium on utility disconnections for non-payment. The moratorium should be without means testing, period.
Yes, I'd like to make that motion since I suggested it.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so that's made by Dennis, seconded by Mary Alice. Further discussion on that amendment? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll on the amendment?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
That motion passes. And then could we have a roll call vote on the main motion for the resolution as amended?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Colebrook,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes. And thanks everyone for the support.
Thank you. That motion passes. Okay, that is it for the committee report. Do we have any reports from special committees? Okay. Next up is reports of officers. I asked and we've had inquiries from a couple council members to have an update on the recent shootings that occurred in the city of Urbana and actually across our community as a whole. So Chief Serapin.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I believe some press releases went out. I'm going to refer to a couple of those, and then I have a little extra information to add to each one. So bear with me if you've heard some of this information. As the mayor has already said, there were two rather severe shootings in Urbana over the weekend, one on Friday night and one on Sunday afternoon. There was another local shooting as well, I guess overnight Saturday night or very early Sunday morning. First of all, there was an incident on Friday night, April 9th at about 8:20 p.m. out in the Prairie Green complex. At that point, and that's out of the 2500 block of East Washington. Officers were sent to reports of shots fired. When they arrived, they located dozens of casings, as well as multiple bullet strikes in the parking lot area on cars and on the buildings. Officers searched that area where they found one deceased male, 34-year-old Eric Kirk, who was discovered to have one gunshot wound to his head. The officers responded to that and conducted CPR, but unfortunately, the man did die. That was on Friday night. Sunday afternoon, we had another shooting in the 1100 block of South Weber Street. In that particular event, it was about 4:30 in the afternoon. Again, officers dispatched to multiple reports of shots fired, where a 46-year-old local man was found in the front yard of a house there. That man too had one bullet wound to his head. That man is still alive, but is in life-threatening intensive care condition right now. In that particular event, the man was simply in the front yard area, was actually walking a dog for a friend. In that event as well, there was a silver sedan that was seen leaving the area shortly afterwards. And I think that information has been pushed out to the press as well. In the first event, one of the things that I mentioned, and we have some of these discussions at different community meetings, is the increase in the number of shots that have been fired. In the event, there were the first one on that Friday night, there were over 60 casings recovered at the scene. 60. There were multiple calibers of casings that were recovered. And that is what makes this so extremely concerning. And while each event, the information we've collected so far leads to a theory of intentionality in both events, they weren't simply random. I say that simply to let everyone know, but it's not, and it's clearly not to undermine any safety concerns. However, when there are 60 casings, that means 60 projectiles were going one direction or another in that particular complex on Friday. The event on Sunday afternoon was much smaller, and I don't have an exact number in front of me here with regard to the number of casings there. So those two events, coupled with the event, the other local event Saturday night, I just wanted to make sure that these are the kind of events that do use a lot of resources. We've had Urbana patrol officers start the event, start the investigation, then Urbana detectives. We had Illinois State Police crime scene technicians out on Friday night. We've had the Champaign County Coroner's Office we've worked with. We've worked with the local street crimes task force on this event and utilized their resources to help us locate people. We've had investigators from the county sheriff's office, detectives from Champaign assist. So we've had a lot of effort put forth, and we will continue our investigations as we move forward. And I spent most of my day on this as well. So that's the quick update for council. If you have any questions, I will attempt to answer them.
Any questions, Dennis?
I don't know if you can share this or not, but did the victim in the first instance also have a gun on his possession?
I won't go into those particulars, I guess right now. Sorry, Mr. Roberts.
It's fine, thanks. Just thought I'd wonder.
Understood.
Mary Alice?
It doesn't sound like it, but I wanted to ask if there was any indication that these incidents were related to one another.
We have no evidence to support any theory that these two are related at all to each other.
Chief, could you give the phone numbers? At this point, you're still in the early stages of the investigations. Are there phone numbers that the public can call if they have any information that they can share? Absolutely. The main number here is 217, I guess now we have to dial 217-384-2320, 384-2320, or Crime Stoppers is also available, 217-384-TIPS, TIPS. Correction, 373-TIPS, TIPS, 373-TIPS. And there's also a website, and that Champaign County Crime Stoppers also takes texting and whatnot as well. Ms. Hersey, I thought I saw your hand.
I just wanted to know if you had any leads at all as to what could have caused either of these shootings.
I generically can say yes, the detectives have things they're following up on, yes.
Okay.
Bill.
Yeah, Chief, I'm concerned how your officers are doing because you had mentioned it, but I just don't want it to be glossed over by the public or the council. Your officers responded, noticed that the victim had a gunshot wound to the head, and they performed CPR. That's very dramatic. It's a very dramatic occurrence in anybody's life, let alone an officer who is experienced and perhaps has done that before. These things, they chip away. They absolutely make an impression, and I'm concerned about how not only the officers that showed up to that scene, but the officers who showed up at the other scene, and just in general, the officer, how they're holding up as they go about their daily duties.
So thank you for the question. It's always something we need to be aware of. It's always something that we talk about, especially as the teams afterwards will discuss. This is the team that's working this weekend they would work due to our 12-hour shift plan. They work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the team that was working on Friday nights, the same team that was working on Sunday night. The detectives came out, they worked all night to Friday night, overnight in the early morning hours, come back, sleep quickly, come back on Saturday, and had sort of be able to put a pin in it until they get called back out for a second one on Sunday. So right now, I believe they're tired, but that's one of the things that our supervisors have to do as well when we're supervising teams, and having overseen our detectives for 9 years, I do understand that you're juggling a lot of things. So right now, we believe everyone, although tired, is doing okay.
Any other questions for the chief? I would just add, I've been in touch with a number of people, including the Community Coalition, Mayor Finan in Champaign. And what's very important for us all to know and to understand is that this is a community-wide problem. In fact, it's a nationwide problem. There's just being in contact with mayors around the country, there's an increase in gun violence across the nation, in the state of Illinois, and as we've seen here in Champaign-Urbana. And it's something that we have to tackle as a community. And what makes it especially, what makes it different, and I've been involved in efforts addressing gun violence since almost when I got on the city council, is while these are mostly not random events, the unpredictability of these events is horrific because of the number of, the nature of them. When you're, a gunfight in a parking lot or shooting up a house, it's not just one target. It could be 60 different targets. It could be all the people in the house, and it is. So the type of event has changed over the past few years, and that's what makes it especially challenging. But we will be tackling this as a community. But again, if people have information they can share, it's 217-384-2320. We cannot solve this without help. And 217-373-TIPS. I did have one other thing I wanted to report, and it's on a positive note, and that is the project that some of us participated in on Saturday, and it was a house building with Habitat for Humanity. This was sponsored by Savoy United Methodist Church, but City of Urbana employees volunteered for both shifts on Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon to raise the walls in this home. So we had volunteers from Urbana Police Department, Urbana Fire Department, Public Works Department, Urbana Free Library, Executive Department, and then a few other folks. And it was a tremendous experience. I just want to thank everyone who volunteered and those who organized it. And this is, I think we have over 55 Habitat for Humanity houses now built in Urbana, and it's a tremendous partnership that we've had over the years. So this is a project at 1211 Eads Street, and it was just a very rewarding experience, and it changes people's lives, and that gives gives us a lot of hope. So thanks again for all the volunteers. And the effort was led by Chief Seraphin. So in terms of getting the city volunteers. So I thank you for that. Last item on the agenda is new business, and it's resolution 2021-04-018R. That's a resolution of protest against a proposed zoning map amendment to the Champaign County zoning ordinance. Kat Trotter, are you taking the lead on this?
Yes, I am. And I've got a short presentation for you all. This is a request by Ryan and Amanda Donaldson to amend the zoning map for 3804 North Cunningham Avenue from County Ag 2 Agriculture to County B4 General Business to allow them to establish and operate the Illini Fire Service LLC. At the March 11th, 2021 CCZBA meeting, the Champaign County Zoning Board of Appeals voted unanimously to enact rezoning with one special condition. And at the March 18th, 2021 meeting, the Urbana Planning Commission voted unanimously to forward this case to the City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest as presented. This is a zoning map that was prepared by Champaign County Planning and Zoning. The property is located on Cunningham Avenue. It is a 7.05 acre tract of land, about 0.42 miles north of the Urbana city limits within the 1.5 mile ETJ. The city should examine the proposed rezoning to ensure compatibility with existing city ordinances. The petitioners would like to construct two buildings on the property. The first building, phase 1, will house the Illini Fire Service LLC, and the second building would have an office and warehouse space for another construction-like company. A special use permit has also been applied for to allow multiple principal buildings on the same lot in the proposed B4 zoning district. This is a zoning map of the property. The lot was formerly a farmstead, and all but one of the farmstead buildings have been demolished. And per CCPZD, the proposed use is most similar to a contractor's facility with no outdoor storage or operations, which is permitted by right in the County B4 zoning district. There are adjacent commercial and residential uses to the south and west along Cunningham Avenue, and there are agricultural uses to the north and west. This is the county zoning map, and the property is currently zoned County Ag 2 and would be rezoned to County B4. The 2005 Comprehensive Plan and Future Land Use Map designates the area for agricultural use. However, the property is on Cunningham Avenue and the US 45 North corridor characterized by commercial uses. Staff finds that the rezoning and County B4 General Business District would be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. This is a proposed site plan showing the phase 1 and phase 2 buildings, as well as the detention pond on the property. To summarize, Plan Commission and staff found that the application meets the evaluation criteria for the requested zoning map amendment, and the proposed B4 designation is consistent with zoning and land use pattern in the vicinity of the site. The City Council has the following options in the CCZBA case, and this is a little strange, so I've written it out in as clear a way as possible. So the following options are to vote no to protest and to require a supermajority vote at the county board to rezone the property, or to vote yes to not protest and to require a simple majority at the county board to rezone the property. And here are the recommendations from the CCZBA as well as the Urbana Plan Commission, both of which recommended to defeat a resolution of protest, and staff concurs. So here are the options again, just to help for clarity.
Well, actually, that's the opposite of what they would do if they moved the resolution as presented.
And I'll ask Lori to step in on this, but we wrote the ordinance in a way that I believe here, Lori, I'll bring it up again, sorry.
The ordinance is written as though if you vote yes, it would approve a protest. Excuse me, did I say that right? The ordinance is written so that if you vote yes, the city would protest. So yes, correct. Sorry.
So just ignore what's on the screen there and
We
we'll.
tried so
walk
hard to get it
through
right this
I
time.
know,
I'm
I
sorry.
appreciate it. Every time we do this, it's confusing. So let's start with any technical questions for Kat, and then we'll get the motion going. Mary Alice.
So Kat, can you throw up the site plans real quickly?
Yeah, for sure.
So one of the things I was looking at in the red here, it says septic field. So I'm assuming they're not planning on connecting to the sewer. Is that correct?
Correct. They will be installing a new septic system, which will be located, I believe it's over 100 feet from the detention pond and over 100 feet from the field tile that they plan to install as well.
Okay, was it cost prohibitive for them to hook up to our sanitary sewer?
Yeah, and they're not required to, and had they wanted to.
They would have to annex.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, all right, thank you.
Bill Brown, you had a question?
Yeah, what is it they do? It says it's like a contractor. So is it they make equipment or they do training or?
That's a great question. I believe they're more equipment driven. Yeah, that's I don't really have the specifics on the business operations, but the county planning and zoning department had written the report in a way that it was phrased as under a contractor's use.
It's my understanding just from dealing with them on construction projects that they would go in and they design like a sprinkler system and all of the equipment that is associated with that. Okay, and then so changing this zoning would allow other uses besides this. If they went out of business or they decided to sell the business, somebody else could convert it to any B4 use, right?
Yes, and that's kind of the object of the phase 2 building as well, to allow other contractor services or contractor-like services to be on the same property.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Sharice and then Eric.
Yeah, I kind of have the same question that Bill had, Lori. So you said that so we're rezoning. I'm just trying to understand
the county. So remember, this is in the county. Okay. So the county the applicants are requesting the county rezone the property in order to allow this use to be in a different zoning district.
So does the county know what they do? I mean, does the county?
Yes, so our role is to determine if this zoning is in conflict and would harm the city of Urbana in any way, while the county's role is to go through all of the LaSalle criteria to ensure that this rezoning is appropriate.
Okay, so my another question in that I have, because you're talking about a detention pond, what is that used for? Can anybody give me is that where water spill off is? Yeah, but is it going to be like water spill off from their manufacturing something
No, it's the impervious surface that they have.
Okay.
So like all of our developments today, unless you're already built out 100%, require some sort of detention or another way to deal with your stormwater.
Okay, since they're not being hooked up to the Urbana sewage.
Well, those are separate systems, but
okay.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get understanding. Okay.
Bill Colbrook?
I guess in plain speak, is the recommendation to support this development or to fight the development?
In plain speak, we are in support of the rezoning.
Eric.
And why do we support conversion of valuable farmland into business use when these buildings could be put in a more urban area? Why the sprawl?
Well, in this case in particular, there are other commercial and residential, more developed uses around this particular piece of farmland. And also something that we took into consideration when staff was looking at the criteria was that it is on the Cunningham Avenue commercial corridor and the US 45 corridor, which in Urbana is also characterized by commercial uses.
So what's the plan for converting all, I mean, what is the long-term plan? Are they planning to take out all that farmland along 45 and make it business?
I think this property in particular, because it is adjacent to Cunningham Avenue itself, is different from other farmland in the vicinity further off of Cunningham Avenue and the commercial corridor and like uses. I can't speak for the county, but I think that was staff's perspective when weighing the criteria and looking at how this will influence future development.
Bill Brown, did you have a comment? Question?
I was going to make a motion, and I'd like to make it to support the resolution of protest, although I plan to vote no. I think that's the way that this was kind of intended, because it was intended as a safety measure for cities, so that by default, we propose a resolution of protest. So I just think that that's the way that it was intended. Sometimes we've kind of changed it and said, let's move to defeat it. But so I'm just going to.
Yes, please move as written on the agenda.
Move to approve the resolution number 2021-04-018R, resolution of protest.
I'll second.
Moved by Bill, seconded by Jared. And just to make sure everyone is clear, if you vote yes, you are voting to support the protest. If you vote no, you're voting to defeat the protest. And the recommendation from the Plan Commission, or from the which commission for?
Yes, the Plan Commission.
Plan Commission was to defeat the resolution of protest. So you want to, that would be a no vote.
And then I'll say I'm planning on voting no. I think I think it's true that it's unfortunate to see a lot of farmland converted, but this is frontage on a main highway. Seems like a highest and best use. I'd rather see it in town where it's easier for employees to get to if they don't have cars. But I think if we didn't approve it, they'd find someplace else to go and it wouldn't be moving into town anyway. So it's better to have it close to town than not at all.
Any other comments? Jared?
I also just want to say, Eric, for your reference as a small business manager, I'm facing this exact same situation with the company I manage, trying to find somewhere to go. We're expiring a lease where we are at, and sometimes, even though I understand the environmental impact of developing farmland or anywhere that is undeveloped, finding a place to go in town, especially in Champaign-Urbana, is extremely expensive. It's very difficult, and sometimes developing in a rural place in a periphery is like really the only good business option that you have. So, I think most people would prefer to be in town. I know I certainly, our operations would benefit greatly from being in town because most of our work occurs in town, but we may find ourselves in the situation where it's just unaffordable, and it's easier to develop new and buy land in the county than it is to develop in town. So that can often be a business decision that somebody's making too. Just perspective.
Any other council comments? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
No.
Mr. Sachs,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
No.
Mr. Brown,
No.
Mr. Roberts,
No.
Mr. Colebrook,
No.
Mr. Miller.
No.
That motion passes.
Well, the motion fails.
I'm sorry, that motion fails. Force of habit.
Double negative.
That motion was defeated. The resolution of protest was defeated. Thank God we don't do these very often. With no further business before this council, we will stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.